Bethany Doherty. In the rolling fields of Kilowog, New York, life moves quietly. Families have lived here for generations, and strangers don't go unnoticed. That's what made the disappearance of Bethany Buffy Doherty, a 40-year-old mother, so unthinkable, a case that, to this day, has left more questions than answers. On November 7, 2015, a Saturday, Buffy vanished. According to the Broome County Sheriff's Office, Buffy was last seen at her home that morning by her teenage son. The official timeline states that she left the house on foot, carrying nothing more than a light jacket. Her phone, purse, keys, and car were all left behind. The family reported her missing that evening after she failed to return home or contact anyone. Law enforcement quickly mobilized, recognizing the urgency. Search parties fanned out across the rural landscape, woods, fields, back roads, and creeks. Friends, neighbors, and even strangers from surrounding towns volunteered to help, braving cold November winds. Drones, helicopters, and search dogs were all used, but not a single trace of Buffy was ever found. Bethany Doherty, known by friends and family as Buffy, was a mother of 3, beloved for her kindness and down-to-earth nature. She lived in a modest home on Kilowog Hill Road, just outside the center of town. Those who knew her describe a woman who was dependable, loving, and rooted in her family. She always put her kids first, one neighbor told local news. She wasn't the type to just disappear. Investigators spoke with everyone close to Buffy, her ex-husband, her children, neighbors, and acquaintances. Each was cooperative, and according to police, was cleared of suspicion. There were no signs of forced entry, no struggle, and no evidence of violence at the home. The last person to see her, her teenage son, told investigators, "She said she'd be back soon." The quote, relayed by police, has since become a haunting refrain. Early on, police addressed rumors about Buffy's state of mind. In an interview with WBNG News, Broome County Sheriff's Office, Captain Kathleen Newcomb said, "There's no indication that she planned to leave. There was no history of depression, and she was looking forward to upcoming holidays with her family." The search went statewide. Flyers were posted from Binghamton to Syracuse. The New York State Police and National Center for Missing Adults became involved. Buffy's family offered a reward, pleading with the public for any information. Despite hundreds of tips, not a single one led to Buffy's whereabouts. In the years since, the investigation has gone cold. In 2021, the Broome County Sheriff's Office issued a statement. "This case remains open and active. We urge anyone with information to come forward, no matter how small it may seem." To date, there has been no evidence to indicate foul play, but police have not ruled it out. The lack of physical evidence, witnesses, or credible sightings is, as one detective told local reporters, deeply frustrating. People don't just vanish. The cost to Buffy's family has been immeasurable. Her children, now adults, have grown up in the shadow of her absence. Friends in Kilowog gather each November to remember her, still hoping for answers. As one family friend told the Press and Sun Bulletin, "Not knowing is the hardest part. We just want closure, one way or another." Bethany Doherty's disappearance remains one of New York's most perplexing missing person cases. In a community where everyone is noticed, the silence left by her absence is a daily reminder that some mysteries, even in the smallest towns, are never truly solved. Biba Solite. On the night of November 19, 2006, the quiet suburb of Swords, County Dublin, was shattered by an act of violence that remains unresolved to this day. The life of Biba Solite, a 28-year-old Latvian mother, was cut short on her own doorstep, just steps away from the home she'd worked so hard to build for herself and her 2 young children. Biba came to Ireland seeking the promise of a better life, like so many others from Eastern Europe in the early 2000s. She settled in Swords, worked hard, and built a small circle of friends and support. At the heart of her world were her 2 little boys. As one friend later described, Biba lived for her children. Everything she did was for them. According to her own mother, quoted in an Irish Independent interview, she was so happy to be making a new life. She only wanted to give her boys safety and love. But beneath the surface of her new beginning was a long shadow, one cast by a bitter custody dispute with her ex-partner, Hassan. For years, Biba had fought in the Irish courts to regain full custody of her sons after Hassan abducted them in 2004 and took them out of the country. The ordeal left her shaken, but also fiercely determined. She told a reporter, "All I want is for my children to be safe, to have their mother." Friends would later recall how, even after winning back custody, Biba remained anxious about her family's security. On that November night, Biba had just returned home from dinner with a friend. As she unlocked her door on Ridgewood Avenue, an unknown assailant approached and shot her at close range. She collapsed on her front step, mortally wounded. A neighbor, hearing the gunshots, called emergency services. Despite their efforts, Biba was pronounced dead at the scene. The killing shocked the Swords community and made headlines across Ireland. Gardaí, Irish police, quickly opened a murder investigation. The circumstances, Biba's ongoing legal battle, repeated warnings to authorities about threats, and her expressed fears for her safety led investigators to suspect the crime was targeted. In fact, in the months before her death, Biba and her solicitor, Michael Lynn, had both reported threats to the police. Lynn later testified at a public inquiry. "She told me many times she was afraid for her life. We went to the Gardaí. We asked for help." Biba's parents, devastated, traveled from Latvia to care for her orphan children. At a memorial, her mother said through tears, "My daughter came here for a better life, and now we are left with only pain. Her boys have no mother, and we have lost our light." Despite intense investigation, including the arrest and questioning of several individuals, no one has ever been charged with Biba Solight's murder. Hassan, while long considered a person of interest, has consistently denied involvement and was not charged. Over the years, Biba's family and friends have repeatedly called for justice. At a vigil, her friend Liga said, "We will never stop fighting for Biba. She deserves justice. Her children deserve answers." For Gardaí, the case remains an open wound. In a 2016 appeal marking the 10th anniversary of Biba's death, Detective Superintendent Noel McCarthy said, "This is a case that has touched all of us deeply. We have never given up. We are again asking anyone with information to come forward for the sake of Biba's family and her boys." Today, nearly 2 decades later, Biba Solight's murder remains unsolved. Her children, now young men, have grown up without their mother's gentle hand. Her family carries the burden of her absence, and her friends still gather each November to remember a life ended far too soon. For the people of Swords, and for all who seek justice, her story is a painful reminder that some wounds remain open, and some answers are still out there, waiting. Peter Bergman. There are few cases that confound investigators, haunt entire communities, and trouble even the most seasoned cold case experts. The story of Peter Bergman, the name he gave but almost certainly not his own, begins on a gray June morning in 2009 on the windswept Irish coast and ends with more questions than answers. On Friday, June 12, 2009, a man walked into Sligo bus station carrying a worn purple plastic bag and a canvas duffel. He looked to be in his late 50s or early 60s, thin with silver hair, glasses, and the air of someone traveling alone. At the front desk of the Sligo City Hotel, he checked in under the name Peter Bergman, providing an address in Vienna, Austria, an address that investigators would later discover did not exist. For 3 days, Bergman kept to himself. CCTV footage later revealed a pattern of almost compulsive order. Each morning, He left the hotel with a purple bag bulging with personal belongings. Each evening, he returned with the bag flattened and empty. In between, he walked the town, visited the post office to buy stamps for unknown recipients, and, most critically, was seen at various public rubbish bins around Sligo, quietly disposing of small packages. The exact contents of these packages were never recovered. Not a single item was ever found. Throughout his stay, Bergman avoided unnecessary contact. He offered no identification except for the name and false address. When asked, he spoke in a soft, precise accent. Some said German, others thought Dutch or Eastern European, but never let slip a word about his past, family, or purpose in Sligo. He never made a phone call from his room. No visitors, no meetings. At breakfast, he was polite but distant, declining conversation. The hotel staff recalled only his gentle manners and the sense that he was a man who wanted to be left alone. On Sunday, June 14th at 1:06 p.m., Peter Bergman checked out of his hotel, paid in cash, and carried his 2 bags out the door for the last time. He was next seen walking toward Ross's Point, a scenic and isolated beach just north of Sligo town. The next morning, a local discovered his body lying in the sand, waves lapping at his feet. He had no identification, no wallet, no phone, nothing but his clothing, a small sum of cash, and a packet of headache tablets. The autopsy found no signs of violence, but it did find advanced prostate cancer and bone tumors, illnesses that would have soon been fatal. Toxicology showed only trace levels of medication, not enough to cause death. The pathologist later said, "He was a man with a plan. He did not want to be found. He erased himself." Irish police, known as the Gardaí, scoured Europe for any trace of the man who called himself Peter Bergman. Interpol alerts, DNA checks, missing persons databases all led nowhere. The stamps he purchased were never traced to any recipient. The name, the address, the nationality, every lead dead-ended. Over a decade later, Peter Bergman's identity remains unknown. No family has ever come forward. No friend has ever claimed him. For the people of Sligo, his presence lingers, a silent question on the edge of the Atlantic. As one local investigator put it, he wanted to disappear, but he left just enough behind to be remembered. In a world where so much is documented and tracked, the man who called himself Peter Bergman remains an enigma, proof that some secrets can still survive even in plain sight. Patricia Meehan. On the windswept plains of eastern Montana, one story lingers like a mirage, a story of a young woman who vanished before anyone's eyes and whose presence seemed to echo for years after. This is the story of Patricia Meehan, a 37-year-old caretaker and former preschool aide whose unexplained disappearance has left family and investigators searching for answers since 1989. Patricia Meehan grew up in Pennsylvania, the eldest of 3 sisters in a close-knit family. In the early 1980s, she moved west, settling near Circle, Montana, where she worked on a ranch, tending animals and enjoying the solitude of rural life. Friends described Patricia as gentle and reserved. Patty was the kind of person who'd rather take a picture of a bird than shoot it, her mother, Dolly Meehan, told the Billings Gazette in 1990. She loved animals. She didn't have a mean bone in her body. On the evening of April 20th, 1989, Patricia's life took a surreal turn. At around 8:15 p.m., she was involved in a 2-car accident on Highway 200, about 20 miles west of Circle. According to reports, Patricia's car drifted into the wrong lane, colliding head-on with another vehicle. No one was seriously injured, but what happened next would mystify everyone. Witnesses say Patricia emerged from her car and stared silently at the other driver, 19-year-old Peggy Bueller. "She just looked right through me, like she wasn't seeing me at all," Bueller later recalled. Another witness, off-duty police dispatcher Val Johnson, arrived on the scene moments later. "I remember she had this blank look, very calm, almost peaceful," Johnson told local news. "She just looked at us, then turned and walked away." Without a word, Patricia climbed over a barbed wire fence and walked into the open prairie, fading into the dusk. Searchers fanned out across the empty land in the days that followed. Helicopters, search dogs, and more than 100 volunteers scoured miles of rangeland. No trace of Patricia was ever found. No clothing, no footprints, nothing. It was as if the plains had swallowed her whole. The Meehan family traveled to Montana from Pennsylvania, desperate for answers. They posted flyers, gave interviews, and offered a reward for information. "We just want to know she's all right," Dolly Meehan pleaded in a Spokesman Review interview. "If Patty is out there and hears this, please let us know. We love her, and we need to know she's safe." But what followed was unlike any other missing person case. Over the years, hundreds, some say thousands of people across the United States reported seeing a woman matching Patricia's description. She was seen hitchhiking on roads in Montana, wandering the streets of Seattle, in truck stops, and even outside convents and shelters. Many described her as silent, distant, and disoriented. Some tips seemed credible, most were not. Each time, her family followed the leads. None ever led to Patricia. For law enforcement, the case has been uniquely frustrating. "We've never closed the file," a Montana sheriff's deputy told the Great Falls Tribune in 1999. "But after so long, and with so many reported sightings, it's hard to separate hope from reality." As years turned to decades, the Meehan family tried to move forward, but the lack of answers weighs heavily. "The not knowing is the worst," Patricia's sister Sheila once said. "We can't mourn because we don't know if she's gone." Today, Patricia Meehan's story remains a haunting mystery, one of a gentle soul lost in the vastness of the American prairie. The empty road outside Circle, Montana, is just as quiet now as it was that April night, but for Patricia's family, the echoes of her disappearance are never far away. For those who search for lost loved ones, her story is a reminder. Sometimes a person can vanish in full view, leaving only questions behind. Shirley McKeown. In Kansas City, Missouri, on the morning of August 24, 2002, a 71-year-old woman left her home on what should have been a simple errand and never came back. That woman was Shirley A. McKeown, a retired nurse, mother, and neighbor. Her disappearance remains one of Kansas City's most haunting unsolved cases, her absence a silent wound for those who loved her. Shirley McKeown was born January 21, 1931. At the time of her disappearance, she was 71 years old, in generally good health, except that she relied on a pacemaker. She had worked for years as a nurse and later in part-time roles at Hallmark and even at the Kansas City Royals ticket office. On Saturday morning at about 9:30 a.m., Shirley left her residence to travel to her daughter's new home, located only a few miles away. She told those working on remodeling that she would be by in the morning. She never arrived. By Sunday afternoon, concerns grew. Her daughter attempted to call her at 2 p.m., but got no answer. Neighbors reported that Shirley's dog was left outside overnight, and her Sunday newspaper remained unopened in the yard. The back door to her residence was unlocked. Her daughter insisted that it would be uncharacteristic of her mother to neglect the animal or leave town without telling anyone. That same day, authorities were contacted and Shirley was formally reported missing. Days later, on September 3, 2002, Shirley's white 1990 Cadillac DeVille was discovered in a vacant lot near 33rd Avenue and Highland in Kansas City. The car was hidden behind trees covered with a tarp and brush. Its Missouri conservation license plates had been removed and never recovered. Inside the back seat, investigators found a large amount of blood, enough that authorities concluded she could not have survived whatever event occurred in that vehicle. That discovery transformed what had seemed a disappearance into a case of suspected foul play. Because nobody was ever found, Shirley McKeown remains legally missing and under enduring investigation. The Kansas City Police Department still lists her as an unsolved missing persons case. Over the years, law enforcement pursued leads. A man living in the neighborhood where her car was found came forward to the police and was interviewed voluntarily. Authorities even searched his home. That individual has not been publicly named as a suspect. Another man admitted to driving Shirley's car at some point and having some of her possessions. He too was questioned but never charged. Despite all efforts, no arrest has ever been made. For Shirley's family, the absence is a persistent grief. She has no known descendants who speak publicly, but her daughter, who needed her for that short trip, is left with unanswered questions. In public appeals, Kansas City officials have joined with families in urging anyone with information to step forward. The human cost is quiet, but real. A woman who lived to help others. Retired nurse who cared for her community vanished in plain daylight. Friends remember her as gentle, reliable, someone who would not abandon responsibilities. Her car, once a vessel of daily life, became a grim puzzle piece. The unanswered questions remain. What happened to Shirley McKeown? Who removed her plates, covered her vehicle, and left her blood behind? Why has nobody ever come forth with credible information? Shirley McKeown's disappearance is a testament to how fragile certainty is, even in a place as populated as Kansas City. In small corners of Missouri, people still speak her name, and investigators still keep her file open. Because if there is one promise cold cases must keep, it is this: we do not forget. We search until the answers come. Zeb Quinn. In Asheville, North Carolina, the story of Zeb Wayne Quinn echoes across decades. A mystery that shattered a family, confounded investigators, and still haunts those who remember the gentle, soft-spoken 19-year-old who vanished on an ordinary night in January 2000. Zeb Quinn was a recent high school graduate working part-time at Walmart and attending community college. He was close to his mother, Denise Vlahakis, and his sister. Friends remember him as kind, loyal, and sometimes shy. He was a good kid, his mother told Dateline NBC years later. He loved animals. He loved being with his friends and his family. On the evening of January 2, 2000, Zeb finished his shift at Walmart and made plans to look at a used car for sale. He left the parking lot in his own Mazda Protege, followed by a co-worker, Robert Jason Owens, who claimed he was helping Zeb check out the vehicle. According to Owens, after a brief stop at a convenience store where Zeb appeared to receive a mysterious page and seemed agitated, he sped off, leaving Owens behind. That was the last confirmed sighting of Zeb Quinn. By the next morning, Zeb's mother grew worried. He hadn't returned home, and his absence was completely out of character. Denise filed a missing person report. "I just knew something was wrong," she later told reporters. "Zeb would never just leave and not tell us." The search began immediately. Police interviewed friends, family, and co-workers. Jason Owens told police that Zeb had driven off in a hurry, never to be seen again. Suspicion quickly settled on Owens when he showed up at the hospital the next day, claiming he'd been in a car accident. His injuries, police noted, were inconsistent with his story. But with no concrete evidence, the case went cold. Then, 2 weeks later, a break, a strange one. Zeb's car was found abandoned in the parking lot of Little Pig's Barbecue, just a few miles from where he'd last been seen. The car held bizarre clues: a live Labrador mix puppy, a hotel key card, and a few empty bottles. On the rear windshield, Someone had drawn a pair of lips and 2 exclamation points in lipstick. None of these items belonged to Zeb. The puppy, later adopted by a local officer, had no known connection to the family. Inside the car, police also found a jacket and some hair, but nothing that provided a concrete lead. Detectives followed up on every tip, even as the years passed and hope faded. Zeb's mother never stopped searching. "We just want answers. Even if it's bad news, we need to know what happened to our boy," Denise said in a 2015 interview with WLOS News. The investigation circled back repeatedly to Jason Owens, whose story never quite added up. Still, there was no body, no confession, and no direct physical evidence linking him to Zeb's disappearance. In 2015, 15 years after Zeb Quinn vanished, the case took a shocking turn. Owens was arrested and later convicted, not in connection with Zeb, but for the brutal murders of another local couple, JT and Christy Codd. During the trial, prosecutors revealed that Owens had confessed to destroying evidence in Zeb's case, but details remained sealed. In 2017, Owens pleaded guilty to being an accessory after the fact in Zeb Quinn's presumed murder. He admitted to helping dispose of evidence, but has never been charged with murder itself. For Zeb's family, the pain is endless. His mother still visits the woods near Asheville, searching for any sign of her son. "He was just a boy, barely started living," she once said, her voice quiet but unwavering. "He deserves to come home." 25 years on, the mystery of Zeb Quinn endures. A teenager lost, a car with lipstick doodles and a silent puppy, and a family's hope that someone, someday, will finally tell the truth. Maura Murray. On a cold February evening in 2004, a 21-year-old nursing student named Maura Murray disappeared along a dark stretch of rural highway in New Hampshire. The mystery of what happened to her remains one of America's most confounding cold cases, a story of a young woman lost, a family left searching, and a trail that runs cold just as quickly as it began. Maura Murray grew up in Hanson, Massachusetts, the fourth of 5 children in a close family. She was bright, athletic, and ambitious, an honors student who ran track at the University of Massachusetts Amherst. By winter 2004, she was midway through her junior year, balancing coursework with a part-time job and a long-distance relationship. But beneath the surface, Maura was struggling. Just days before her disappearance, she crashed her father's car late at night, and days later, a troubling email hinted she'd be taking time off from school for a family emergency. In reality, there was no such emergency. On February 9th, Maura emailed her professors, notified her work that she'd be gone for a week, and packed a small bag of clothes, toiletries, and textbooks. She withdrew $280 from an ATM, bought alcohol from a local store, and set off alone, driving her black Saturn sedan north out of Amherst. By early evening, Maura was in New Hampshire's White Mountains, nearly 140 miles from campus. Around 7:27 p.m., a resident of Woodsville, New Hampshire, called 911 to report a car accident on Route 112. Maura's car had gone off the road, striking a tree. The witness described a young woman, alone, visibly shaken but unhurt, standing outside the vehicle. Another neighbor, Butch Atwood, a local school bus driver, stopped and offered help. Maura declined, saying she had already called for roadside assistance, but phone records later revealed no such call was made. Atwood drove off to call police. When officers arrived just after 7:45 p.m., they found the car locked, the windshield cracked, and a box of wine spilled inside. Maura was gone. Footprints led away from the car, but soon disappeared into the snowy darkness. The road was empty, the woods silent. The next morning, Maura's belongings, her school books, clothes, snacks, and the alcohol she'd purchased were found inside the car. Her cell phone, bank card, and ID were missing. There were no obvious signs of a struggle, no blood, and no indication she'd been picked up by another car. The scent trail, tracked by dogs, stopped abruptly about 100 yards from the crash site. The investigation that followed was intense and wide-ranging. Family, friends, and volunteers blanketed the area with missing posters. Police searched the woods and nearby rivers, but nothing was found. Media coverage exploded, and internet forums buzzed with theories. Was Maura running away? Was she the victim of foul play? Did she plan to vanish, or did something sinister happen on that dark mountain road? For Maura's family, the agony of not knowing has been relentless. Her father, Fred Murray, has spent years searching, organizing annual ground searches, and pressing authorities for new leads. "It's an open wound," Fred told the Boston Globe in 2014. "Every day I wake up and hope today is the day we find her or find out what happened. She's my daughter. I'll never give up." In the years since, Maura's case has drawn national attention, podcasts, documentaries, and endless speculation online. But the facts remain few. A car crash, a young woman alone, and then nothing. Nearly 2 decades later, Maura Murray's disappearance endures as a heartbreaking mystery. Her family still holds out hope. "We want answers. We want to bring Maura home," her sister Julie has said. "She deserves to be found. We deserve to know." On Route 112, the seasons turn. The roadside is quiet, but for Maura's family, the search will not end. Not until every possibility is explored and every question answered. Brittany McCormick. In the hot, unsettled days of late summer 2013, a 27-year-old mother named Brittany McCormick disappeared from her hometown of Brockton, Massachusetts. What followed was a desperate search, a family torn by grief, a community left with questions, and a cold case that still aches with unanswered sorrow. Brittany McCormick was, above all else, devoted to her family. She was the mother of 2 young children, and her siblings recall a woman who loved her babies more than anything. Her older sister, Melissa, told reporters she was so full of life. She had her struggles, but she always tried to do better for her kids and for herself. On August 18, 2013, Brittany left her mother's home in Brockton. According to family and investigators, she said she would be back soon. She was last seen later that day in the company of a man she'd been dating, a man police would later question at length. But Brittany never returned. She never called. And for her family, alarm grew with each passing hour. Days turned to weeks. Brittany's family posted flyers, made social media pleas, and called hospitals and police stations across the region. Her sister Melissa told the Enterprise newspaper, "We can't sleep. We can't eat. We just want to know where she is." Brittany's mother echoed that pain. She would never leave her kids behind, not like this. The Brockton Police and Massachusetts State Police joined the search. Investigators tracked Brittany's last known movements and questioned those who had seen her that day. The man she was last with told police he dropped her off in Brockton, but could not recall the exact location. Law enforcement found no evidence of foul play at her mother's home, and Brittany's car and belongings remained untouched. Months slipped by. For Brittany's family, each day without answers felt endless. "It's a nightmare you can't wake up from," Melissa told local reporters. "We're just waiting by the phone, hoping for anything." Tips came in but led nowhere. The search expanded from Brockton to neighboring towns, Taunton, Bridgewater, Boston, but still nothing. In September 2014, a year after Brittany vanished, her family and friends held a candlelight vigil. Tears flowed and prayers were said. "We're not giving up," Melissa said that night, her voice trembling. "Brittany, if you can hear us, we love you. We're still looking for you." The pain of her absence was visible on every face. As months became years, investigators continued to check new leads. Brittany's name was entered into national missing persons databases. Detectives interviewed new witnesses and, in 2017, renewed public appeals for information. But there were no confirmed sightings, no evidence that Brittany had traveled, and most heartbreakingly, no messages for her children. The case of Brittany McCormick remains officially open. Massachusetts State Police have said, "We have not forgotten. Brittany, every missing person matters, and we will continue to follow every lead. For her family, the agony is unending." "We need closure," Melissa told Boston 25 News. "Even if it's not the answer we want, we just need to know. Brittany deserves to come home." In the years since her disappearance, Brittany's children have grown, and her family's lives have been forever altered. Her mother still keeps her room as it was, a silent reminder of the laughter and life that once filled their home. On birthdays and holidays they gather, hoping that someday their prayers will be answered. Brittany McCormick's story is one of love, loss, and longing. It is a story shared by too many families, of a bright spirit gone without a trace and a search that refuses to end. For those who loved her, the hope is simple, that someone, somewhere, holds the key to bring Brittany home. Brandon Swanson. On a mild spring night in 2008, 19-year-old Brandon Swanson drove into the Minnesota countryside and vanished, a disappearance that still baffles investigators and breaks the hearts of those who loved him. Brandon's story is a quiet tragedy, a young man's final phone call, a desperate family search, and the enduring hope that answers still might be found in the fields of western Minnesota. Brandon Victor Swanson grew up in Marshall, Minnesota, where the prairie horizon runs long and flat. He was friendly, responsible, and independent, a recent high school graduate taking classes at a local community college. Brandon's parents, Brian and Annette Swanson, described him as a good kid, just trying to find his way in life. He was close with family, loyal to friends, and known for his easy laugh. On the night of May 14, 2008, Brandon attended a small party to celebrate the end of the spring semester. He drank no alcohol, and his friends later confirmed he was sober when he left just after midnight, headed home to Marshall. But sometime after 1 a.m., Brandon's car went off the road near the tiny town of Taunton. His Chevy Lumina became stuck in a ditch along a gravel road. Alone, unable to free the car, Brandon called his parents for help. That call, just before 2 a.m., would become the most important and heartbreaking piece of the mystery. Brandon told his father he thought he was near Lind, just a few miles from home, but in reality, he was almost 25 miles away. He said he could see lights and was going to walk toward them, his father Brian recalled in a Star Tribune interview. "We kept talking, trying to find him." For nearly 47 minutes, Brandon remained on the phone with his parents as they drove the dark roads, headlights scanning every intersection. He described what he saw: gravel underfoot, fences, the sound of water nearby. At one point he exclaimed, "Oh, shh," and the call abruptly ended. Repeated attempts to call back went unanswered. Brian and Annette drove and searched until sunrise, calling out their son's name into the empty countryside. "We just wanted to bring him home," Annette said. "We never imagined he wouldn't be there." When police joined the search later that day, Brandon's car was found abandoned on the edge of a field not near Lind, as he thought, but far north, outside Taunton. There were no signs of foul play at the scene, no evidence that Brandon had been injured. Searchers fanned out across fields, ditches, and rivers. Bloodhounds traced Brandon's scent for a while, following it along the gravel road, through fields and toward the Yellow Medicine River. There, the trail seemed to end. For Brandon's family, the weeks and months after his disappearance were an agony of waiting and searching. Volunteers combed the countryside, and the National Guard even used sonar and aerial drones to search the river and nearby fields. "It's the not knowing. That's so hard," Annette told CBS News. "He was right there, talking to us, and then he was just gone." Every year, on the anniversary of Brandon's disappearance, the Swanson family organizes a vigil and search. In 2009, their efforts helped lead to Brandon's Law, a Minnesota statute requiring police to immediately investigate reports of missing adults, no matter their age. "We didn't want another family to go through what we did," Brian said. "We wanted to make sure the search starts right away." As the years have passed, hope has changed shape, but it has never faded. The fields around Taunton still hold their silence, but Brandon's memory remains vivid for those who loved him. "We won't stop looking," Annette has said. "Brandon deserves to be found, and we deserve answers." Brandon Swanson's story is a reminder of how quickly a voice can be lost in the dark and how fiercely a family's love endures. The search for him goes on across fields, rivers, and time itself. Lars Mittank. In the summer of 2014, a 28-year-old German man named Lars Mittank went on holiday with friends to Bulgaria's Black Sea coast. What began as an ordinary vacation would turn into one of Europe's most perplexing missing person cases, a young man fleeing into the unknown, and a family left with a mystery that still echoes across continents. Lars Mittank grew up in the small town of Itzehoe in northern Germany. By all accounts, he was easygoing, close to his family, and looking forward to a week in the sun. Friends would later recall him as relaxed, cheerful, and just one of the guys. In late June 2014, Lars and his group arrived in Golden Sands, a lively beach resort outside Varna. For a few days, everything was normal: sunbathing, swimming, nights out on the town. But on June 30th, a minor incident set off a chain of events that would change everything. Lars was reportedly involved in an argument with other tourists over football teams, a disagreement that escalated into a brief scuffle. Lars suffered a minor ear injury and, after visiting a local doctor, was diagnosed with a ruptured eardrum. He was prescribed the antibiotic cefuroxime and advised not to fly home until cleared by a doctor. His friends, unable to extend their stay, returned to Germany on July 7th. Lars checked into a cheap hotel near the airport in Varna, telling his mother, Sandra Mittank, that he would follow as soon as he was cleared for travel. Over the next 24 hours, Lars's behavior became increasingly erratic and paranoid. He called his mother several times, whispering that he was being followed, that men were trying to kill him, and that she should cancel his credit cards. He sounded scared, like someone was after him, Sandra told German television. I could hear the fear in his voice. Hotel security cameras later showed Lars pacing nervously in the hallway, hiding in the elevator, and briefly leaving the premises at night. Staff remembered him as agitated and anxious. He told one employee that he felt unsafe and needed a place to hide. On July 8th, Lars took a taxi to Varna Airport. Security cameras captured what would become the most iconic and haunting footage in the case. At 5:30 a.m., Lars entered the airport clinic for a final checkup. Suddenly, without warning, he stood up, left his luggage behind, and sprinted out of the terminal, ducking under a fence and disappearing into the surrounding fields and forest. He has not been seen since. The Bulgarian police launched an extensive search of the airport grounds and surrounding countryside. Drones, dogs, and volunteers combed the fields and woods, but no trace of Lars was ever found. His phone, wallet, and passport were all left behind in his luggage. Despite international attention and multiple reported sightings in Bulgaria, Romania, and even as far away as Canada, none have ever been verified. For Lars's mother, the pain is unending. He would never just leave us, Sandra said in a televised appeal. I know something happened to him. We just want him home. Experts have debated what might have caused Lars's sudden panic, head injury, side effects from antibiotics, or a mental health crisis. But without evidence, every theory remains speculation. The only certainty is the loss felt by his family, who travel to Bulgaria every year to keep the search alive. As the years pass, the image of Lars running barefoot across the airport tarmac endures, a symbol of a mystery without resolution. For those who loved him, hope remains that one day the truth will be known, and Lars Mittank will come home. Lars's case is a reminder of how quickly a life can turn from ordinary to inexplicable, and how the questions of the missing linger year after year in the hearts of those left behind.